Clementine Barnabet, born in 1894 to Nina Porter and Raymond Barnabet in St. Martinville, Louisiana. She had 3 brothers and her father was abusive. They moved to Lafayette, Louisiana in 1909. In 1910, Clementine, her father Raymond, and brother Zephyrin started a voodoo cult. Through 1911 and 1912, towns along the Southern Pacific Railroad line running through Louisiana and Texas, 12 poor black families in poor black communities were murdered. The families were murdered in their home using an axe. All murders occurred around midnight. An axe was used to fracture their skulls. Victims. All victims were mulated, heads and limbs would be separated from their torso and stream all over their house. On November 11, 1909, on a Saturday night in Rayne, Louisiana, 15 miles from Lafayette, Edna Opelousas, her 3 kids, ages 4 to 9, were murdered by an axe. On January 1, 1911, in Cowley, Louisiana, Walter Byers, his wife, and son age of 6 were murdered with an axe. February 25, 1911, Alexander Timmy Andrus, his wife, and 11-month Angie's were murdered. Raymond Barnabet was arrested on October 24, 1911, of suspicion of the murder of Andrus family murders in Lafayette. Raymond was released on sufficient evidence, but was re-arrested months later. Clementine and her brother testified against their father, stating the night of the murders their father came home with a bloody shirt and bootings. Raymond Barnabet was convicted for the Andrus murders. Meanwhile, the axe murders continued while Raymond was in prison. In November 26, 1911, in Lafayette, the Randall murders, Norbert, Asima, and their 4 kids were slain. On November 25, 1911, the police arrested Clementine and Zephyrin. While held in custody, axe murders continued. Clementine confessed to murders during a hearing on November 29, 1911. She confessed to 17 to 35 axe murders. The Church of Sacrifice, life by sacrifice persons will gain immortality. Clementine explained to the authorities her connection with Church of Sacrifice, an offshoot of Christ's Sanctified Holy Congregation in Lake Charles. She claimed a priestess of the Church of Sacrifice given her and her friends a conjure bag resemble the charm of good luck in voodoo, and will grant them supernatural powers to be undeniable to the authorities. She described in contemporary reports as very self-contradictory, claiming to commit murders alone and at times with others. The voodoo time spurred her to commit her first murder as a test. January 20, 1911, Broussard, wife, and 3 children murdered in Lake Charles. March 17, 1911, a mother, her son, and 3 daughters butchered in Beaumont, Texas. March 26, 1911, in Glidden, Texas, Ellen Monroe, a negress, for children, Lyle Funicune slain. A religious fanatic written in blood or pencil when he mocketh inquisition for blood. He forgot 10th not to cry of the humble Psalms 9:12. On April 2, 1912, she confessed to a reporter Fanalus marked for death, and she said, "Would you pay the sacrifice?" The grand jury indictment Clementine on April 4, 1912. April 5, 1912, snitched on Joseph Thibodeau, voodoo doctor given the idea of murders. Other arrests were made: Reverend King Harris as the God of Sacrifice Church, Eliza Richards, and May Thomas. Clementine trial began on October 24, 1912. She was a Creole, tall, straight-limbed, and one of the 8th Negroes. She sat in the witness chair with screams of hysterical laughter. She rocked back and forth in the chair, Clementine's eyes rolling into the back of her head, barely any of her pupils showing. Clementine was sentenced to life in Louisiana State Penitentiary on October 25, 1912, at the age of 19. She tried to escape, but was caught in July 1913. In August 1923, Clementine was released from prison for good behavior, and an unspecified surgical operation believed to have cured her. After Clementine Barnabet released, she disappeared. 6 years later in New Orleans, the axeman was back. People said Clementine loved to travel. The axeman was never found. Rumored in 1985, a woman visiting her 103-year-old great-grandmother living somewhere in Louisiana. She told her the story of Clementine Barnabet. Shortly after great-grandmother dies of old age, the woman found a photo of her when she was younger. The photograph resembled Clementine Barnabet.